A simple act of kindness at a snowy bus stop changed his life forever. But what he didn't know was that the shivering woman he helped was hiding a secret that would shock him and the world. The city was shivering under the grip of an early winter chill. Rain fell steadily, a cold, relentless drizzle that turned the streets into slick mirrors, reflecting the dull yellow glow of the streetlights. Jamal trudged along the pavement, his thin jacket doing little to shield him from the biting wind. His shoes squelched with every step as puddles formed in uneven cracks along the sidewalk. He had worked late at the small grocery store downtown, and now he was exhausted, his stomach rumbling quietly in protest. All he could think about was reaching home to his mother, who had been unwell for days. He pulled his collar tighter around his neck, wishing he had something warmer. The bus stop came into view, a simple metal frame with a bench that was slick with rainwater. A few people huddled under the weak shelter, arms crossed, shivering against the cold. Jamal exhaled slowly and joined them, checking his watch anxiously. The bus was already 15 minutes late, and he couldn't afford to be any later. That's when he noticed her. She was standing at the far edge of the bus stop, her posture stiff, shoulders hunched against the wind. Unlike the others, she didn't seem to be wearing practical clothing for the weather. Her coat, while clearly expensive and stylish, was soaked through, and her delicate heels were sinking into the puddles. A faint shiver ran through her, visible even in the dim light. Something about her caught Jamal's attention. It wasn't just the rain or the cold. It was the way she seemed completely out of place, fragile in a world that had suddenly turned harsh. Jamal hesitated for a moment, glancing around to see if anyone else would help. But the other commuters were absorbed in their own discomfort, staring at their phones or muttering complaints under their breath. The woman's eyes, however, met his for a brief instant. There was a look of vulnerability, almost pleading, that seemed to reach out directly to him. Without overthinking, Jamal removed his jacket, fumbling slightly with the zipper. "Here, you should take this," he said, approaching her cautiously, trying to keep his voice calm. The woman turned toward him, surprised. For a brief moment, Jamal thought she might refuse, but instead her eyes softened and a small, grateful smile appeared on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain and the traffic. She took the jacket, wrapping it around herself carefully, as if it were more precious than he realized. It's nothing," Jamal replied awkwardly, feeling a strange warmth despite the chill. He stepped back, unsure of what else to say. The bus hadn't arrived yet, but he felt a sudden shift in the air, as though something momentous had just happened. Though neither of them could have known it, the woman glanced at the bus stop schedule, frowning slightly. I hope I'm not keeping you," she said. Her voice was gentle, with an accent Jamal couldn't quite place. "You're not," he said quickly, waving her off. "I was cold anyway." His words sounded clumsy even to his own ears, but he felt compelled to speak, to fill the awkward silence. For a moment they just stood there, two strangers sharing a simple human connection in the midst of a dreary, rainy evening. Jamal noticed the way her hair clung to her forehead, damp from the rain, and the subtle tremble in her fingers as she adjusted the jacket. It struck him how fragile she seemed, yet there was something in her presence, an elegance, a quiet strength that made her stand out from the other commuters. The bus arrived with a sudden roar, lights cutting through the darkness, reflecting off the wet streets. People began shuffling forward, umbrellas popping open, bags rustling. Jamal stepped aside to let the others pass. The woman hesitated for a moment, as if she wanted to say something more, but instead she nodded and walked toward the bus, disappearing into the dim interior, her soaked heels clicking against the metal steps. Jamal watched her go, feeling a curious emptiness. It was strange, he thought, how quickly someone could leave such a lasting impression. He pulled his own jacket tighter and slumped onto the wet bench, glancing at the streetlights flickering in the puddles. The bus arrived at last, its doors hissing open. Jamal climbed in and found a seat by the window, staring at the city outside. Rain continued to fall, drumming softly on the roof of the bus. All through the ride, his mind kept returning to her. He wondered where she was going, what had brought her to this cold, rainy street at this hour, and why a simple gesture of offering his jacket had seemed so significant. Little did he know, that moment, brief and seemingly inconsequential, would ripple through both of their lives in ways he could never have imagined. When he finally reached his stop, Jamal hurried home, the warmth of his small apartment wrapping around him like a cocoon. His mother was resting on the sofa, looking pale and tired. He set down his bag, heated some tea, and helped her settle in. Yet even in the comfort of home, he couldn't shake the image of the woman at the bus stop. Something about the way she had looked at him, grateful yet distant, lingered in his mind. Sleep eventually came, but the memory stayed. Jamal didn't realize it at the time, but that one act of kindness, giving a stranger a jacket on a rainy evening, was about to set off a chain of events that would alter his life forever. In the quiet of his small apartment, with the rain still falling outside, Jamal had no idea that the woman he had helped was far from ordinary. She was someone powerful, someone influential. Someone who had the ability to change the world, and now, unknowingly, she had the potential to change his life as well. And so, the night passed, leaving only the memory of a small, human act of kindness that neither of them could yet fully understand. The next morning began quietly for Jamal. The rain had stopped, but the air was still cold and damp, carrying the faint smell of wet pavement. He woke up later than usual, feeling the stiffness in his muscles from the long day before. His jacket, the one he had given away, was gone, of course. He hadn't expected it to come back, but strangely he felt no regret. It was just another day in his life, and small acts like that were part of who he was. On his way to work, Jamal walked with his head down, avoiding puddles and the occasional splash of passing cars. The streets were busier than usual, and people moved with a purpose, clutching umbrellas or coats against the lingering chill. He reached for his phone to check the time when a headline caught his eye. At first, he thought it was an ordinary news article, but the image on the screen froze him in place. It was her, the woman from the bus stop. The soaked coat, the elegant yet tired posture, the way she had smiled softly at him. It was unmistakable. The headline read, "Billionaire CEO saves struggling city shelter." Curiosity pulled him closer. He tapped the screen to open the article. The story described a woman named Elena Whitmore, the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world. She had just donated an astonishing sum of money to save a shelter for homeless women and children. The article painted her as a powerful, compassionate leader, admired across the globe for her work. But what stunned Jamal most wasn't the charity itself. It was a small line tucked toward the end of the piece. Her life changed after a stranger's kindness. He blinked, reading it again. Could it be? Was it possible that the woman he had given his jacket to was this CEO? And more than that, could this moment of kindness he barely thought about be mentioned in the news? Jamal's heart began to race. He stared at the article for several minutes, scrolling through the pictures, searching for proof that it was indeed her. Every detail matched: the style of her coat, her hairstyle, the delicate way she carried herself. This wasn't a coincidence. He thought about the encounter the night before, the brief exchange at the bus stop. How she had accepted his jacket without hesitation, her eyes reflecting something deeper than gratitude. He had never imagined such a small gesture would end up being part of a headline in the city's biggest news outlet. Throughout the day, the image of her stayed in his mind. At work, he found it hard to focus. His co-workers noticed his distraction. They teased him when he kept checking his phone, but Jamal couldn't explain why he felt so unsettled. It wasn't just curiosity, it was something else. A growing sense that his life had crossed paths with someone extraordinary. By the time his shift ended, the city had grown quieter, the streets glistening under streetlights. Jamal's thoughts were still with her. He wondered if he should go back to the bus stop, as if she might be there again. But something inside him told him that night was already part of something larger. When Jamal arrived home, he found an envelope slipped under his door. There was no return address, only his name written in elegant script. He hesitated before picking it up, his curiosity mixed with unease. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper and a small card. The note was short, written in neat handwriting. Dinner with Elena Whitmore. Tonight, 8 p.m. No questions asked. The card had a simple but luxurious design, embossed with her name and a logo he recognized from the article. Jamal's breath caught. This wasn't just a coincidence anymore. Somehow she had found him. He stared at the envelope for a long time, weighing what to do. On one hand, it was strange. An invitation from someone he had never spoken to properly, someone powerful beyond imagination. On the other hand, something about the gesture felt genuine. She didn't just thank him at the bus stop. She was reaching out. By the afternoon, Jamal could think of nothing else. His friends laughed when he told them, calling it a prank or a coincidence. But Jamal knew this was real. Something deep inside him told him that this was no ordinary invitation. When evening came, Jamal stood in front of his mirror, staring at himself. He wore his best suit, the one he had reserved for special occasions. His jacket hung in his closet, replaced by something warmer but less impressive. Still, he felt a nervous excitement he couldn't explain. The address on the card led him to one of the tallest skyscrapers he had ever seen. Its glass walls reflected the city lights like a giant diamond, and the lobby was immaculate, polished floors, marble walls, and a receptionist who greeted him with a warm but professional smile. A chauffeur escorted him up in a private elevator, the doors sliding open to reveal a quiet, lavish dining room overlooking the city. Elena was already there. She stood as he entered, her expression calm but curious. The jacket he had given her the night before was draped over the back of her chair. She smiled when she saw him. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, her voice carrying a warmth that made Jamal uneasy in a good way. Over the course of dinner, she spoke about her work, her struggles, and her mission. Jamal listened, realizing she wasn't just a businesswoman. She carried a purpose. At one point, she looked at him intently and said, "That night, at the bus stop, you didn't know it, but you gave me more than a jacket. You gave me something I desperately needed." Jamal didn't know what to say. Her words hung in the air like a secret. What was it that he had given her beyond the jacket? Before he could respond, Elena leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "I want to offer you something. Not just a thank you, but a chance." Jamal blinked, confused but intrigued. He had no idea that this moment was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change his life forever. Jamal arrived at the address Elena had given him 15 minutes early, his mind racing with questions he could not answer. The building was unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering glass walls reflected the city lights, and the lobby was enormous, polished and silent, except for the soft hum of hidden machinery. A gentle scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, and every detail felt carefully designed to impress. A smartly dressed attendant directed him toward a private elevator, its interior lined with brushed steel and soft leather seats. As the doors closed, Jamal took a deep breath, wondering what kind of world he was stepping into. The invitation had been vague, and he had no idea what awaited him. When the elevator doors opened, Jamal found himself in a quiet, dimly lit corridor that led to an expansive dining room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city below, stretching endlessly, with lights shimmering like stars. The table was elegantly set for two, the flicker of candlelight dancing across fine china and crystal glasses. Elena was already there. She stood as Jamal approached, her movements graceful, yet filled with a quiet strength. Her wet coat was draped neatly over her chair, the jacket he had given her the night before resting on top of it. She smiled softly when she saw him. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice calm but layered with meaning. There was something in her tone that made Jamal feel both honored and nervous. Jamal nodded, unsure what to say. I wasn't expecting this. You didn't think I would find you," she replied, smiling faintly. Her eyes held a softness that contrasted sharply with the steel elegance of her surroundings. They sat across from each other. For a few moments neither spoke. Outside, the city buzzed quietly, oblivious to the private conversation unfolding high above its streets. Finally, Elena spoke. That night at the bus stop, it wasn't a coincidence. I'd been struggling, overwhelmed with decisions that felt impossible. And then you offered me your jacket without hesitation. Her words were measured, but carried weight. It reminded me of something important. Kindness matters, even in the harshest moments. Jamal swallowed hard. I didn't know it meant that much to you. You didn't know, she said, leaning forward slightly. But it did. That gesture changed how I saw things. It made me reconsider choices I was about to make. That night, I was walking toward a decision that could have harmed the shelter I care about. Your kindness reminded me of why I started this work in the first place. He stared at her in silence, trying to process the weight of her words. The woman he thought he'd only met briefly had just revealed something monumental, that his jacket, his simple act, had altered the course of her decisions. Elena took a sip of her wine, then placed her glass gently on the table. I want to offer you something, Jamal. Not a thank you, not just a gesture. Something bigger. I want you to be part of something important. Jamal's heart quickened. What do you mean? She studied him for a moment, her gaze steady. I want to give you a chance to change your life. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering opportunity. You've seen the world differently. You've shown me that even the smallest acts can have great power. I need someone who understands that. Someone like you. Jamal felt his stomach twist. The idea of working for a billionaire CEO was overwhelming. He had never imagined being in a situation like this. But I'm just a store clerk. I don't belong in a world like yours. Eleanor smiled softly, shaking her head. You think this is about belonging? No, it's about perspective. You have a perspective that's rare. You see people, not numbers. You act without thinking about what you'll gain. That's why I want you to help me. She leaned back slightly, her eyes scanning the city skyline. My foundation has a project coming up, one that could change lives for thousands. But I need someone who understands people deeply. I want you to lead it. The words struck Jamal with a mixture of disbelief and fear. Lead a project for a billionaire CEO? It sounded unreal, almost like something out of a dream. I don't know if I can, he murmured. You can, she said firmly. I don't ask for blind trust, Jamal. I offer a chance to grow, to learn, to make an impact. And I want you to decide for yourself. For the rest of the evening they talked quietly. Elena spoke of her work, her vision, and her fears. Jamal listened, realizing she was not just a business leader, but a woman driven by purpose. Her life, he began to understand, was a balance between power and responsibility, and she saw in him something worth nurturing. Before the night ended, Eleanor stood and approached him. You don't have to decide tonight, but think carefully, Jamal. This could be the start of something extraordinary for you and for the lives you might touch. As he left the skyscraper, Jamal felt the weight of her words pressing on him. Outside, the streets were quiet, lit by the glow of street lamps and the soft hum of traffic. Rain had begun again, light at first, then steady. Jamal wrapped his coat tighter around him, thinking back to the bus stop, to the jacket, to Elena's invitation. He had no idea how much his life was about to change. That night, Jamal lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He could still hear Elena's words echoing in his mind. I want to give you a chance to change your life. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. What if he said yes? What if he failed? What if this was the chance he had been waiting for without even knowing it? Sleep finally came, but the questions remained. The bus stop had been just the beginning. Jamal didn't yet know it, but his world was about to turn upside down. The next morning, Jamal woke to the sound of rain tapping softly against his window. The city was quiet, the storm having faded overnight, leaving behind a cool, wet hush. His mind was still tangled in thoughts of the previous evening. Elena's words echoed in him. I want to give you a chance to change your life. He had not slept well. Every time his eyes closed, he saw the image of her at the bus stop, shivering in the rain, accepting his jacket without hesitation. Then her invitation, the dinner, the offer. He had replayed every detail, wondering whether he should call it coincidence or destiny. When his phone buzzed later that morning, it startled him. The message was short. Come to the Whitmore Foundation headquarters at 10 a.m. Elena. Jamal stared at the message for a long time. He didn't even know what the Whitmore Foundation was, but something inside him told him this was the next step. He put on his worn jacket, the one he usually reserved for colder days, and headed out. The building was larger than he expected, even more impressive than the skyscraper from the night before. It felt alive, a hive of purpose rather than a cold corporate machine. Inside, people moved with quiet focus, talking in low voices, walking with determination. Jamal followed a receptionist's directions to a private conference room. Elena was already waiting there, her expression calm but inviting. She gestured for him to sit. "I'm glad you came," she said. "You have a choice, Jamal. I don't want you to think of this as just a job. This is something bigger." She explained that her foundation was about to launch a large-scale project, one that would change the way aid was delivered to struggling communities. She wanted Jamal to lead it. Jamal blinked in surprise. "Lead? I don't have any experience. You have something far more valuable than experience," Elena replied. "You have empathy. You understand hardship because you've lived it. You see people, not problems. That's what's missing in so many projects. And that's why I need you." She handed him a folder filled with plans, charts, and notes. As Jamal flipped through the pages, he saw the scale of what she was proposing. Entire neighborhoods would be transformed. Housing, education, healthcare, employment opportunities. But it wasn't just charity. Elena wanted this project to be sustainable, led by people who truly understood the needs of the community. "This is your project," she said softly. "You'll run it, decide the strategies, meet the people, guide the teams. I'll provide resources, but the vision must come from you." Jamal felt a rush of emotions, excitement, fear, disbelief. He had never imagined stepping into such a world. His life until now had been simple, working, helping his mother, surviving. Now he was being offered control over something that could impact thousands of lives. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted. "You don't have to be ready," Elena said. "You just have to be willing to step forward, willing to take responsibility. That's all I ask." For hours they discussed the project. Elena introduced him to her team, a group of people passionate about making a difference. They spoke of the challenges ahead, bureaucracy, logistics, funding, and the risks of failure. But they also spoke of hope. By the end of the day, Jamal was exhausted but inspired. He stepped outside into the evening air, the city lights shimmering on wet pavement. He walked slowly, replaying Elena's words and the magnitude of her offer. At home, Jamal sat with his mother, telling her what had happened. She listened quietly, her eyes searching his face. "This could be a blessing, Jamal," she said finally. "But it could also change everything. Are you sure you want this?" Jamal nodded slowly. "I don't know, but something tells me I have to try." Over the following weeks, Jamal began his work with the Whitmore Foundation. Elena gave him full authority, and he dived into the project with determination. He traveled to neighborhoods, spoke with residents, listened to their stories. He learned quickly that this work was not easy. There were roadblocks, disagreements, and moments of doubt. But there were also breakthroughs. Children finding safe places to study, families receiving homes, small businesses being built. Elena checked in regularly, not to oversee him, but to encourage him. She trusted his judgment, and that trust gave him courage. One afternoon, as he walked through a neighborhood newly transformed by their project, Jamal met a young woman who reminded him of the woman at the bus stop. She was tired, worn, and shivering in the rain, but she smiled when she saw him. Jamal handed her a blanket from his bag, the same instinct that had led him to give Elena his jacket months ago, surfacing without thought. That night, Jamal returned to Elena's office. She was waiting, looking at city plans across her desk. When he told her about the encounter, she looked at him with something between pride and surprise. "You're learning faster than I expected," she said softly. "That's why I asked you to lead this. You understand what this work truly means." Weeks turned into months. Jamal's role grew, and with it his confidence. The project expanded beyond the city, touching lives far and wide. But amidst the progress, Jamal began to notice a subtle shift in Elena. She became quieter in meetings, more reflective. Occasionally, she would disappear without explanation, leaving her team wondering. One evening, as they reviewed reports in her office, Jamal asked her about it. She smiled faintly. "There are things I can't share yet, but soon you'll understand." Jamal respected her silence, but it added another layer of mystery to their work. He was no longer just leading a project. He was part of something much larger. The offer Elena had made him was not simply about giving him a job. It was about giving him purpose and preparing him for something he could not yet imagine. As Jamal left the office that night, the city sprawled beneath him, lights shimmering against the dark sky. He thought back to the jacket he had given away, to the bus stop, to the moment that had set all of this in motion. What had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something much greater, and though he did not yet know it, Jamal's journey was far from over. Months passed, and Jamal's life transformed in ways he had never imagined. His mornings were filled with planning sessions, visits to neighborhoods, and meetings with his team. His evenings were consumed with writing reports and strategizing. He rarely saw his old life anymore. The nights at the bus stop, his small apartment, even his quiet moments with his mother had shifted under the weight of his new responsibilities. The project he led under Elena's foundation was flourishing. Entire communities had been revitalized, with schools reopened, job training programs established, and safe housing built. People began to speak of Jamal's work with respect and admiration. To him, it was never about recognition. It was about the people whose lives were changing because of what they were doing. But despite the success, a quiet tension lingered beneath the surface. Elena became more elusive. She rarely attended meetings now, sending her most trusted aides instead. When she did meet with Jamal, her tone was gentle but guarded, as though she was keeping something hidden. Jamal respected her space, but the sense of mystery surrounding her grew. One evening, as Jamal left the office, he decided to walk home instead of taking his usual car ride. The city was alive with its usual hum. Street vendors calling out their wares, lights flickering, the faint scent of food and rain mixing in the air. His steps took him toward the bus stop where it all began. The same cold wind brushed against his face, and he paused. He could almost feel the memory of that night, the drizzle, the jacket, and her quiet smile. As he stood there, deep in thought, he heard footsteps approaching. Turning, he saw her. Elena. She was dressed simply now, without the elegance of the skyscraper dinner, but there was still a quiet grace in her presence. She smiled softly at him. "I thought I might find you here," she said. "Why are you here?" Jamal asked. He noticed she was holding something. A small box, delicate and carefully wrapped. "I came to give you this," she said, handing it to him. He took it slowly, surprised by the weight of the moment. Inside was his jacket, the very one he had given her months ago. Alongside it was a note in her neat handwriting. "You changed my life. Now let me change yours." Jamal's eyes widened. He looked at her, searching for an explanation. Elena gestured for him to sit on the bench. "Jamal, there's something I need to tell you. Something I haven't told anyone." Her voice was soft but intense. "The moment you gave me your jacket was not just kindness to a stranger. It was the moment I realized the person I needed to lead this work, to carry this vision forward, was someone who truly understood compassion." Jamal's heart pounded. "I still don't understand. Why me?" "Because you didn't know who I was. You didn't hesitate. You acted without expectation. That's rare, Jamal. That's the kind of leadership the world needs." She paused, looking out at the rain-slicked streets. "That's why I've been preparing you." He stared at her, confusion and awe mixing in his mind. Elena took a deep breath. The foundation was never just about helping communities. It was part of something much bigger. "My company, My entire mission has been about finding a successor who understands people. Someone who can lead not just with strategy, but with heart. Jamal's breath caught. You're saying, you want me to take over? She nodded slowly. Yes, I want you to become the face of the Foundation, to lead its mission and eventually take over my role. This project we started together is only the beginning. I've been testing you, watching how you work, listening to how you lead. You've proven yourself, Jamal. He was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. The bus stop jacket, the dinner, the project, it all suddenly made sense in a way he hadn't seen before. This was never just a job offer. This was a passing of the torch. Elena reached forward, placing her hand on his. I know this is a lot to take in. I'm not asking you to decide tonight, but I want you to think about it. This is an opportunity to shape the future, for thousands of people, perhaps millions. Jamal nodded slowly, his mind racing. He thought of his mother, of the neighborhoods he had visited, of the faces of the people whose lives had changed under his leadership. He thought of the kindness that had started it all, a small act at a bus stop in the rain. I'll think about it, he said finally. Elena smiled, her eyes reflecting something between relief and pride. That's all I ask. She stood, placing her jacket over her shoulders and giving him a final nod before walking away. Jamal watched her disappear into the night, the city lights shimmering in the rain around him. In the days that followed, Jamal couldn't shake the moment. The weight of the decision Elena had given him pressed on his mind. He walked the streets more often, revisiting the neighborhoods that his project had touched. He spoke to residents, hearing stories of hope and change. Every story reminded him why he had agreed to lead this work in the first place. One afternoon, his mother found him sitting quietly in their small living room. What's going on in your head, Jamal? She asked gently. He hesitated before answering. I was offered something. Something I never imagined. Elena wants me to take over her foundation. She stared at him for a long moment. That's a huge responsibility. Do you want it? I don't know yet, Jamal admitted. But I feel like this jacket I gave her, that moment, it was bigger than I realized. Maybe this is what it was meant to lead to. His mother smiled faintly. Sometimes the smallest acts lead to the biggest changes. That night, Jamal returned to the bus stop once again. The rain was soft, almost gentle, and the air smelled of earth and renewal. He stood there quietly, holding the jacket Elena had given back to him. A car passed, splashing water on the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed midnight. Jamal realized that life had shifted irreversibly. A moment of kindness had become a turning point, a decision that could shape his future forever. He folded the jacket carefully, tucking the note inside his pocket. The city seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath. Jamal knew one thing for certain. Whatever choice he made, his life would never be the same again. And the truth was, he was ready for whatever came next. One small act of kindness turned into a life-changing journey. What would you do if you were in his place? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories that will leave you speechless.